Elden Ring F, sorry, I meant Silent Hill F is sparking tons of different opinions online. But to not waste time, I am not here to say if the game is woke or not, or if the story is good or not. I leave that to the side of YouTube where people either despise everything from the game or glaze it beyond belief. I am here to say that this title doesn't feel like Silent Hill at all. From strictly a direction view on art and gameplay, and if you disagree with me, I don't care. When it comes to gameplay, Silent Hill F makes a fundamental shift in gameplay design, which everyone has seen already. The original SH games, much like classic RE, were built around resource management. The real tension didn't come from the thrill of how many enemies you had to kill or dodge in the right time. It came from how many bullets, health drinks, and ampoules you were willing to spend. Every shot, choice to avoid enemies mattered. SHF mostly abandoned that design to build its gameplay on pure combat as spectacle, and not a very good one. You can dodge and avoid conflict sometimes only, but you're often pushed into fight after fight because the mechanics themselves were structured around it. You have the classic over-the-shoulder melee combat system borrowed in a mixture of Dark Souls and Naughty Dog's history-driven IPs, rewarding you with the parrying system and dodge mechanics, changing its pacing towards action. It's obvious. To put things in perspective, I actually went through MK Ice and Fire's playthrough of Silent Hill F and manually counted every single enemy encounter. By the end of his 8.5-hour run, he had killed 208 enemies. 208! And if you doubt me, go there and count yourself. It was a fucking Herculean task. Now let's compare that to something measurable, like Maximilian Dood's first playthrough of the original SH2. His clear data at the end of the game showed 107 enemies killed over roughly 9 hours. That's nearly half the body count in the same amount of time. And that's not even accounting for how much slower and more deliberate the original was. Silent Hill F doubles the kill rate of a classic entry while running at about the same length, and that's not just a gameplay statistic. It's a design. When you reach a certain point in the game and the constant shift of worlds happen, you get a new combat system around the Fox arm. Everyone has said it. It's like a devil trigger from DMC. Aside from the questionable design, Hinako transforms and elongates the arm into a more powerful form, which essentially turns the game into an action fantasy right there at that point. It is more than obvious that the game isn't horror through management and vulnerability, rather it's empowerment on said combat. You even collect the enemy souls, for Christ's sake. I am not in any way against innovation, but here, the innovation moves Silent Hill F the furthest away from its roots as possible. It's an action title wearing the mask of an horror game. This just concludes that if Homecoming came out today, people would defend it. And walking along the art department, the visuals themselves also reinforces the same problem. Taking SH3 as a great example of how it treated the use of the other world, when you cross that border, everything turned to the grotesque. Rusted metal, bloodstains, smeared filth, textures that looked wrong on purpose. The environment was ugly in a way that not only felt hostile, but uncanny. That ugliness was meant to create anxiety, and obviously say that things took a serious turn. SHF doesn't give you such sensations at all. Instead, the world looks good, way too good. Even when it shifts around on its otherworld equivalent, the dominant motive is beauty. Just see the red flowers that spread through the environment. The gore isn't revolting, it just adds to the nature. They are a symbol of death and corruption, but they're so visually striking that they lose the oppressive quality the old games thrived on. The folklore horror strips the game from its industrial hellscape. The problem is the same as with the soundtrack, which I'll tackle in a bit, which is the polish. The polish replaces grit to create eye candy. Instead of an atmosphere that is putrid and decayed, you get one that feels curated and aestheticized. It's not that the visuals are bad, far from it. They are really good, they are impressive. But like the combat and the OST, they drift away from what made Silent Hill's art direction iconic in the first place, which is a simple word called disgusting. And that blades upon one of the core elements of the OG franchise, something that any SH game must have: boss fights. They are an agglomeration of the three biggest changes from the classics: design, atmosphere, and gameplay. Older games gave us things like Split Head, Abstract Daddy, or God, designs that felt wrong, stomach-turning, and deeply uncomfortable to look at or be around. SHF bosses are rooted in the same caveat of the twisted visions of a horrendous feeling and fears from the characters, but they are far too aesthetically appealing. Rinko's melted face or Hinako's monstrous parents still looks more epic than revolting. They're closer to something you'd expect from a Souls-like title, in the sense of being grand, cinematic, impressive, but not disturbing in the Silent Hill way. This shift changes the entire feelings you have on a boss fight. Those old, clunky, desperate, and janky fights only amplified the horror of facing something you weren't meant to fight. Rather than battles that are polished and at times cathartic, they are pretty much highlights of gameplay instead of a violation of nature itself. As I said before, but I feel the need to reinforce that, before we had this filth and imperfection, now we have overwhelming sense of beauty and spectacle. If this was any other IP, I wouldn't complain on the art direction, because it is good, I think so at least. It's technically appealing to look at, but the chase of beauty and scale is the exact opposite to the oppressive atmosphere that made Silent Hill so terrifying and unique in the first place. And to further pour salt on the wound, I think one of the core problems to this title is how tightly to the Showa era folklore and aesthetics they got. It feels way too detached from what SH represents. I'm not against changing pace and trying something new. SH was only once about repeating itself in a game, which is 1 and 3, and every other installment is different. Even Silent Hills, both Kojima and Del Toro's tried to reimagine the old ideas for a modern take whilst still carrying forward the series' DNA. The fine line of innovation should bend but not break a franchise's art. Historically speaking, Silent Hill's heart has always been the city itself. Even when the stories distance themselves from the borders of the town, the tone of grit, rust, industrialism, and urban rot lingered over everything. It's not about the geography itself, it's about atmosphere. If you were to strip away the fog and the name Silent Hill, nothing in its presentation ties back to the series. The Showa era lands aren't bad, but they are so overwhelming to the art that they take more than it gives. Replacing the urban decay with folklore spectacle, the game doesn't turn disturbing. It turns beautiful and way too cinematic. Again, it's spectacle over disturbance. And that's why no matter how polished or technically impressive it tries to be, it doesn't feel like Silent Hill. And now allow me to pick up my glasses and say something only nerds will complain about. One of the biggest differences between the classic Silent Hill games and Silent Hill F isn't just in the story or visuals or art, it's also in its sound design. And this is something that gets overlooked, but it completely changes how the game feels. Hear me the fuck out. In SH1 through 4, mainly, the audio was minimal, emphasis on minimal. Many times you only had your footsteps on the background. Take a look. That's it. And that silence wasn't accidental. It was a design choice of the time, following the ones that came before. Because the moment a new sound entered the mix, whether being a static on the radio to tell you enemies were around, an industrial disorientating noise, or a scream of anything beyond your view, was a registered violation of the silence. And it was intrusive. It triggered your fight or flight on a primal level. SHF, much like pretty much all modern games, does the complete opposite. There is always something in the background, faint music, UI pop-ups, loud ambience, characters breathing, or just Hinako and the characters not shutting up.
Doctor? Is that you? Is someone there? My weapon's about to break. Disgusting. I better get going. This must be special. Why would someone put this here?
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
It is indeed immersive, but the problem is that your brain adapts to it really fast. Nothing feels truly out of place. So when the tone changes, it blends into the noise instead of breaking it. This is one thing I miss so much from old horror games, and it's their tension. Silence creates this space of fear, you know? And when you fill every gap with ambience, you remove that important weapon against the player. There's this segment near the ending of the game where they got close to what I'm talking about. When you walk around Hinako's home, you have so much silence. That is one of the most fundamental pieces missing. It's honestly probably my favorite part of the game. Unfortunately, she still needs to constantly speak, but when she only thinks and there's no voice lines and only the really distant sound of the lamp's echo, this is what the audio mixing should have used most of the time. Too bad it's short-lived and the creepy OST number 36 needs to come back. And this isn't just about ambience, the same problem carries into the soundtrack itself. Akira Yamaoka has always given life to Silent Hill, just as much as Mick Gordon for Doom. He is my favorite video game composer for a bloody reason, because his music wasn't only background noise, it was always a sharp weapon. All the way through 4, Yamaoka's tracks leaned heavily on the industrial grit, much like his inspiration in Nine Inch Nails. Distorted percussions, tape hiss, metallic drones, static, guitars that sound broken more than tuned. It was raw and imperfect when it had to be. And when the OST needed to feel beautiful, it was the best in the business. I wish I could show it, but I'm scared of copyright. However, in SHF, you can hear a huge shift. The production is pristine, with smooth mixing and so cinematic that at many times leaning to the lyrical almost resembles an anime track or a high production drama. And while this decision makes sense to the game's Japanese setting, it drifted away from the oppressive mechanical nightmare that carried its way with the scenario and that defined this series' identity. Of course, Yamaoka back in the day wasn't only the composer, dude was the audio director shaping the entire soundscape. Here he is just one of the composers responsible for some of the tracks. And just to be absolutely butt-licking to him, you can hear Akira Yamaoka's in his glory. The soundtrack is good, even if a bit low and not much used, because let's be real, you cannot focus on it, but in the most pretentious way possible to say it, you can hear it, but you cannot hear his world building as he used to. The result is technical and beautiful, but polished in a way that Silent Hill never was when meeting horror. It's not bad, but once more like a broken record, it is in Silent Hill. I know I said this so many times already. And you know, just to finish off my points, because I can say so much more, and dive into something connected to the series' direction and its writing, old SH carried a deeply uncanny tone in how characters behaved and interacted with you. Conversations felt creepy to the least, and uncomfortable at most. Just to take you back, think of Maria back in the second game. Her constant resurrections, her tonal shifts, The way she toyed with James' emotions, or Angela, who could go from fragile vulnerability to bitter rage in a heartbeat, or Eddie, whose casual talks about murder left you unsettled because the dude didn't even frame it as a strange thing. On SH3, Vincent's manipulative, mocking cadence put both Heather and you off track. In SH4, just interacting with Walter felt really weird, as if the things he said just didn't make any sense. They weren't just characters on screen, they were part of the horror. They made you constantly second guess what was going on. And what kind of world were you stepping into? SHF doesn't have that same feeling. The writing and performances are dramatic, cinematic, and too naturalistic. The closest to it is definitely Rinko in that one scene. But again, it is way too normal than SH used to be. This feels like a prestige anime or a high school budget drama, not a fever dream. That old what the fuck is going on energy is pretty much gone, replaced by something cleaner and, as I said, theatrical. Just look at Fox Mask confronting Sakoko. It's straight out of an anime. Usually Silent Hill save its over-the-top stuff for later with UFO endings and magical girl transformations, but god, I just hate this character so much. It's honestly heartbreaking. I waited years for Silent Hill to return, only for it to come back like this. I know people mostly criticize the story, and sure, let me be honest, I could do pretty much the same, but what really hurts me the most is how much of the series' identity has been lost. Because when a story misses the mark, but the foundation still feels right, you can still see the soul of the franchise underneath. But when those foundations, the tone, the direction, the atmosphere, they are stripped away, what's left isn't Silent Hill anymore. And if the things that made an IP what it was are gone, then maybe the title itself doesn't mean anything anymore. Anyways, see ya next time.